Hello. So I have a question. What is the difference between information and knowledge? Well, the dictionary defines information as data that has been structured or organized to provide meaning, and knowledge as the awareness or understanding acquired through experience. In summary, information is everything that we accept based on what we were taught, and knowledge is how we use it. Information answers the question of what, knowledge answers the question of how or why. However, all this is very vague and doesn't do justice to the nuanced idea that civilizations and philosophers have endeavored to explain. So instead, let's imagine that it is the year 1685 in the small Scottish village of Tranent. We are a noble, devout minister, learned in theology and religion. One day, we wake up with a headache, and the wife tells us to go visit the local cunning woman, an illiterate Romani healer. Skeptical though we may be, we decide to go visit this healer for the first time, feeling that it would do no harm and would please the wife. So we visit this healer, and she, following her folk tradition, carves a small wax puppet in our likeness and puts a pin through its head as a record of the ailment. She then brews a herbal remedy passed down through generations in her family. But we know nothing of this doll. What we do know is that she gave us the medicine and told us to return in a week for a follow up. And so we do. The second time we visit the healer, our pain has gone. The healer removes the pin from the puppet and marks the successful treatment of her remedy in her own records. Seeing this, we, a learned and wise man, jump to the conclusion that she has put a spell on us through this doll and is thus a witch. We storm out in a rage, gather the local witch hunters, and come back in a few minutes. The woman is seized, tried hastily, and burnt at the stake. This was a very specific period in the medieval times and offers us a view into the occasionally clear distinction between information, the nobleman's vast banks of learnt wisdom, and knowledge, the healer's years of experience and her remedies, which have no explanation as to why they work, except for the fact that they do. This definition is very biased to its era, however, and does not do quite justice to the definition of these twin concepts that have undergone much evolution through the ages. For instance, in the antiquity, knowledge encompassed everything one knew about their particular field. It was seen as a gift from the gods and worshipped as such. It was worshipped in ancient civilizations as deities such as Athena in Greece, Minerva in Rome, Thoth in Egypt, Saraswati, Ganesha, Odin, and many, many more were revered, and they blessed those whom they favored. Yet, this knowledge was kept amongst the elite, the savants, and the religious leaders. It was not for the common people to understand. What one knew was passed down through songs, stories, and legends. In the medieval time, knowledge was limited to theology and religion and was shared verbally or through the slow manual writings of works. Monasteries wrote and rewrote the Bible and other texts in Latin, making it even more restricted, as those with a good education in theology, religion, and Latin, and who could read or write, were generally monks or male members of the royal family. However, our friend, the nobleman, begs the question whether all this was really knowledge or information. The rest of the common people only held a basic understanding of their field. If anyone, especially a woman, knew too much about other specialities, or if they were simply too curious, they were deemed as heretics and witches and punished severely, like our friend, the healer. Around the 15th century, the invention of the printing press made the sharing of knowledge much quicker, simpler, and much more efficient. Texts could now be translated into local languages, making them accessible to the public, who now had a reason to learn how to read and write. This made the importance of knowledge and its areas shift from theology and religion to humanism. Man became the center of study. Education has now evolved to include all men. That was the Renaissance, the beginning of the modern era. The rest of the modern era weaponized knowledge. It became a method of control through propaganda and other schemes. It brought in the idea of nationality, independence, and identity. Whereas the Renaissance and its surrounding time period was all about colonization and rediscovery, the modern era weaponized knowledge in a way that it harnessed the sciences to become weapons and tactics for mass destruction, leading to two world wars. Yet, the modern era also developed education even further, evolving it to include women and all minorities. Yet, they were still severely discriminated against and often kept from completing their education. Enter the contemporary era. It is described as the end of the Second World War to the present day. By now, knowledge has undergone various transformations, from being worshipped as gods to being restricted and kept a jewel only for whom the aristocracy considered worthy, to the key to the rebirth of society, culture, and curiosity, to being a weapon, a tool of the powerful that could shape mindsets and worldviews, making them wider or more identical. Yet, it is around this time that we begin to ask ourselves whether the tool being wielded is not knowledge, the concrete usage that the gods once offered, but information, facts that exist only in the abstract space of our mind that have little to no hold in the concrete world. It is one thing to know that water falls downwards due to the force of gravity. It is yet another to know how to stay inside to avoid getting wet in the rain, to avoid catching a cold. Yet, what we are taught nowadays through our education system that is built to train children to get a job and keep going until they're on the highest level of the corporate ladder, which is another abstract concept, is information. We know facts. We know 1 plus 1 equals to 2. We know what our bodies are made of. We know how to build a bike. But where did we learn how to ride one? Where did this knowledge come from? And more importantly, where did it go? In a world that is ever evolving, we have mastered electricity, radio and light waves, long distance communication, optical fibers, the internet, and now artificial intelligence. All this leads to a world that is surrounded and drowned by information that is accessible at our very fingertips, our very thoughts, soon. Yet, our education gives us so much information, it keeps us so well informed, but it doesn't tell us what to do with all this information. Information on its own allows the growth of knowledge, but in this age of over reliance on it, we are overwhelmed with the need to justify everything that we come across. Is it not absurd? Have we become so afraid of not knowing how something works that even today we accuse everything from gut instincts to feelings as pure foolishness and irrational, a word itself meaning without reason, without enough explanatory information? Yet, French scientist and philosopher Blaise Pascal has a different view on this world. He says, "Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît pas." The heart has its reasons of which reason knows nothing. And maybe reason doesn't need to know. We don't need to constantly justify everything we come across with all the information our minds can come up with. And maybe just follow our hearts. But the heart can't think. And if we accept reason as information, does that make the heart the same knowledge that we seem to have lost? Who knows? I have one last question. In this world, our world today, so well reasoned and well justified, do we still need knowledge? Thank you.